Hey everyone. So this is probably already a thing that's going to happen, but I just haven't heard a whole lot about it. But I think this a lot of companies are how they store data is going to change in the future, and I think blockchain is how that's going to be done. You hear a lot about all these public blockchains that are on like CoinMarketCap and such, which are great. But in terms of like private data storage, I think that a lot of public and or private companies are going to want to consider blockchain type data storage versus just like regular file storage. And I think I'll just go ahead and get into it. So some of the key aspects with a private blockchain is that you would self mine it. You would have your own ASIC miner or whatever type blockchain that you would use, like an Ethereum type blockchain or something that could utilize DeFi, which I'll get into in a second. You have the private storage of your own data that's not public, so it's an asset of yours. If you have a patent or something like that, you can store it on a blockchain that you have a few miners that you mine this blockchain for whenever you upload documents, or maybe that's your transaction is when you upload data to it, it creates a transaction and creates a block or such and so forth. But moving on, private investors, I think. And then private exchanges and DeFi and direct exchange kind of are all in the same group, because one of the pros I have listed here is that it can still be monetized. And if you have this private data that you don't really want getting out to the public, maybe you sign an NDA agreement with whoever you're trying to exchange this with, but you're exchanging it for money, that you can utilize a private exchange or just send directly. But there might be benefits to having a private exchange for like such large investors that only want to have, or different classes or categories of investors that should or only want to deal with people in their group. There might be different kinds of exchanges for something like that in the future, but there obviously could be things like arbitrage and such and so forth, but that's for another video. So I think these are some of the key aspects of a private blockchain, and then some of the pros and cons. Cons first, obviously there's a large energy usage depending on what kind of miner you're using, what kind of how often transactions are going through and that sort of thing, and how you manage that energy and then the infrastructure for all of that. So like say if you're close to a hydropower plant, then you can utilize the power plant from the water. Or if you have a lot of sunlight or wind in your area, like maybe you can utilize renewable energy sources that would be quote unquote free after your initial investment. So that kind of is the next thing, is you got to also consider your return on investment. So if this is just going to be excuse me, a private blockchain for you to just store data, then it's probably not going to be very profitable, and there could be a lot of upkeep for the energy usage for these miners if you're not careful. But there are, we'll get into the pros, but that could be just something that you have to consider. And then there's also management and upkeep of the actual mining blockchain itself. Not only the data, but the miners, the physical miners, and then like the blockchain, because you're going to have to hire developers, people to upgrade and keep the thing stable, and then make sure that there's no bad actors that can arbitrage your system or anything like that. So those are some of the cons that you may have to consider. With those out of the way, there are some good pros to this, and that you can obviously maintain your own private data. It's not public, and then therefore because you hold on to this asset that no one else has, it's maybe like I said, a patent, then you can therefore monetize it, sell it to people. And I find it, well, not I find it, but one of the other pros is that it's kind of, I put in quotes, decentralization, so that maybe you have multiple people or minor rigs within your organization. So that is the decentralized aspect of it, but it's still within your one organization, therefore private and centralized. So just with that, you have control of the data over what you might want to do with it. And that obviously you can still monetize it, and then it can also be mobile, and you can obviously take this data wherever you want. Like I said, I think this is an obvious step forward for corporations, companies, whoever wants to get into data storage in the future. you're still going to have large capacity computers with large hard drives, a good internet connection, the miners themselves. There's going to be a lot of cost in the upfront, but I can see how it would be better than just a regular file storage like you have on your computer, in that anyone can access it and there's no corrupt data. You can just go and look. Anyone like within your organization that has access to it can go and look up this data. And like with one of my old companies that I used to work for, there was a lot of syncing issues. So we all worked remotely, and there's like 15 of us, but we all connect back to a main server. And if someone hadn't synced something with the server, then I couldn't get access to it to work on that document per se. But let's say that document is uploaded to the blockchain. Well, I can just go and look at the last version, take that, and then work on that, upload that, and then whoever else can just go in. It should be a much faster process without having to worry about a syncing issue, because once the transaction is confirmed, then theoretically you could just go on a blockchain explorer and download said file and work on it. So those are just some, it's just another idea, just a simple video. So hope y'all like it. Hope y'all learned something.